Hello, Namaskar, and a very warm welcome to all our viewers. My name is Bhumika, and I welcome you all on behalf of the complete Digital India team. Today, we have a very special chat session with someone who is a compassionate hand to millions, an iconic superwoman, philanthropist, teacher, author, but above all, someone who's really strong and brave, someone who takes the road less traveled and brings about a staggering change. Through this fireside chat, we will aim to discover a big life told in little anecdotes of perseverance, strength, and kindness. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Sudha Murthy, chairperson of the Infosys Foundation. Among many other awards, she has been honored by the highest civilian honor, Padma Shri in 2006. We are deeply honored to have you, ma'am. Also joining us is Mr. Abhishek Singh, IAS of 1995 batch, who is spearheading the Digital India initiatives as MD, Digital India Corporation, President and CEO, National E-Governance Division, and CEO, MyGov. Now I hand over to Mr. Abhishek Singh to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, it's a proud privilege for me to be talking to ma'am, whom we have grown up admiring her for the work that she has been doing, not only as a writer and author, but the work that Infosys Foundation has been doing. We have associated, though I have not met you, ma'am, but we are associated in the disasters that Infosys Foundation has been handling throughout so many years. So thank you for joining us on this. So we'll straight away go into this for unraveling your life and your vision and for your whole approach, which can motivate not only young kids, but women of all ages. So I was told when you were 17, you had joined your engineering and you completed your engineering and you joined Tata Motors. So in that age, when you were 17, girls joining engineering was not very common, and it was very few. In fact, even in 88, when I joined engineering, the girls were in a minority. Less than 10% of the entire class was girls in the engineering class. So at your age, how did you decide to choose engineering as a profession?
I come from a small town known as Hubli, and I also come from a very small community called Madhwa Brahmin family, where people are very rigid and very orthodox. So there were 3 or 4 compartments meant for women. One is she should become a teacher, primary school, high school, or college, depending on her degree. Or she should become a doctor, nurse or a doctor. Or she should become a clerk, not even officer, in post or in bank. So 3 compartments were set for women in case they want to pursue their career. Engineering was never heard in that. So when I used to love science, and I always loved applied science, because when you look at life, it's applied science that changes life. For example, computer science is an applied science. It is not a pure science. It changes life. So anything in applied science is good for humanity. That's always I thought, and I still think. So I wanted to do engineering, I decided. It was like a bomb in the house, bomb phat gaya, because someone is going to do engineering, and which is never heard. College teachers were not keen. Students were not keen to receive a classmate. Okay, relatives were not keen. So society was not keen. People used to think, I'm doing something wrong. I'm entering into a man's domain. But I felt I'm not doing anything legally, ethically wrong, morally wrong. I want to study. That's all I decided. So I pursued engineering, and there was not a single girl in the university.
Oh, interesting, ma'am. And so you were the only girl when you joined engineering at the BVB Engineering College. And you broke glass ceilings then. But I was told that after the first year, you secured the first rank. This would have again shocked and surprised everyone. So did that also change the way people perceived about girl students joining engineering, which was still then known as a man's area?
Yeah, when I did well in my first semester and stood, first I realized what others felt is different than I myself felt. It's a myth that it's only a man's domain. Anybody who pursues, works hard and passionate about this, they can excel. So I became more confident, and I said, nothing doing, it is more of imagination and if I'm interested, I can do very well. I used to do better carpentry, better smithy, better electrical fitting, better chain survey, everything I used to do very well. So I said, who says it's a man's domain? It's more in our mind. It's an attitude, what you have in our mind, I felt.
Very interesting, ma'am. So, and then after you finish your engineering, you joined Tata Motors, then Telco. So was that in Pune or was that in Jamshedpur? And how was the experience like joining a company like Tata Motors at that point of time as a graduate engineer?
When I joined the Telco in those days, workers were shocked because in Jamshedpur, there is a huge Tata Telco had a presence. And there's a huge shop floor factory known as the Jojobara plant. And they said, one fellow came and told me, no woman has entered this other than Indira Gandhi. She came for inauguration. So how a woman can work with men on a shop floor? Is it ever possible? But ultimately you should have patience. Any social change, it requires time. It's the patience, and people never took it seriously when I joined. They said, oh, this is not woman's job. She might have had the degree, but how can she work? But I showed that I could work better, and I never complained. I have to work, travel or anything. Nowhere, no day I complained. So I'm sure that I paved the way for the less traveled road.
So during your years at Tata Motors, did you see more women joining in after you had joined?
Yes, slowly they started joining. And I used to, I used to drive, and I learned there you to drive a truck. So I'm fond of any vehicle driving actually. So at Infosys, one day we had a bus came for some work, and I said, that fellow, will you allow me to drive the bus? I always like to do that one because I'm very fond of automobiles in general.
That's amazing. In fact, Jamshedpur, I had gone once for the Tata Motors. So they have their test track wherein they test.
Yes.
The tracks. So have you driven there also, ma'am?
No, I have not driven, but I've gone on the test track with someone else. It's a tough one. It is, and in those days, the gears and the clutches were not that easy. You require a lot of might to change that one. Today it's much more easier. So when I look at today's bus or today's truck, I feel they're much user friendly. But I have gone on a test drive with someone else.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, ma'am, when you decided to start the Infosys Foundation and to take up charitable works and to take up works in for disaster management and other activities, what was the whole idea about?
I've written about it. It's my daughter who told me once, Amma, what are you looking forward in life? Is it money? It's a glamour? Is it to travel, or is it to go, relax? What is it? And if you can't do social work, then who else can do? I thought of it for 15 days. Then I decided to take. I had a background also, but I wanted that the poorest of the poor, we should help them so that they can come up in life. That's the main motto at Infosys Foundation. And keeping that in mind, we have built 2,300 houses during flood time. Right now, we are building another 100 houses. Then we have established 70,000 libraries, 14,000 toilets, much before the toilet became an agenda before that. Because as a woman, I know in engineering college, I did not have a toilet. So I know what it is to suffer without a toilet, particularly for women. And we have done, name a thing which we have not done. Okay, at Infosys Foundation in 25 years, we have 14 national disasters we have handled. One pandemic now we are handling. So we have done every disaster, everything you tell us we have handled.
So, ma'am, from being an engineer to working at Tata Motors to doing charitable work through Infosys Foundation and then as a writer, how did this transformation to being a writer come around?
Writing is nothing related with my work. I'm a daughter of a school teacher. My mother was a school teacher. My father was a professor and a doctor. My grandfather was a school teacher. So I grew up with the books all around. Now you can see at the back, I have a small library here. So I always enjoyed reading books, and I started writing in a very young age. My first book, I used to write articles when I was in a teenage. My first book came when I was 28 or 29 years. So writing is always with me. And it is nothing to do with Infosys or nothing to do with Foundation. But Foundation helped me to write better because my canvas became larger. I could meet lots of people around, have a lot of experience, and I can do it better.
That's great, ma'am. So when you write your books, like especially the books which children love and all, is it like inspired by real life incidents, or is it like fictional, or would you like to, is the intent to convey some message with regard to by referring to some incidents that you might have come across or read about?
There are 2-3 types of genre I write. One is for adults. I write that is nothing but Infosys Foundation experience. So I take permission of the people and change the name and their real life incidents. Then when I write for children, I want to tell something to children. If you are lazy, what happens? If you are not passionate, what happens? If you don't listen to elders with their experience, what happens? There I use imagination and make a story and convey that message to children.
That's very interesting, ma'am. In fact, and which one amongst your books you would regard as your favorite book?
It's hard. It's hard for any mother. All children are equal, so any writer, all books are okay. But I think adult writing 3,000 stitches I've seen, and in mythology I have 5 books. All are really very important to me. And if for children book, the grandmother's box, grandparents, grandmother, all the series I have enjoyed writing.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. In fact, we also enjoy some of your books because when my children read, I just try to read what they are reading, and it's all very inspiring and very interesting to see how you weave your stories around real life characters, which seem to be very real life. But what I found that the younger generation these days are kind of losing the habit of reading. So what do you think should be done to promote more reading by the kids and the younger generation?
This is a universal problem. It is not only in India, in every country, this reading habit is coming down because children have a lot more avenues for entertainment, and which is very normal. So any day seeing on a TV screen is more enjoyable than reading a book, because visually you can see that one. But book has a different approach than seeing on computer. If you want your children should read, you should read first. I always tell parents should read first and make it a habit that there should be a reading hour. Up to certain years you can do. After that, children will decide what they want. You can do only in their young years. You should read. You should have a reading hour. And some children pick it up and they continue to read. It may be on maybe a physical book, or maybe on Kindle, or maybe on some other device. But they should get hooked up this knowledge, searching, seeking knowledge, gathering knowledge. That habit you should increase.
Awesome. That's very nice, ma'am. So, and when we look at your entire bio and your entire life, you have been like across cultures, traveled across the world, seen the evolving of the India's major IT revolution from very close quarters, and then you have been meeting so many people across even your work in the social work and all. So, how has that kind of influence? Has the writing influenced the social work, or has the social work influenced more of writing?
Social work has improved my writing because I see so much, and this is the rare experience I get. Most people cannot get it. Then I want to share that my experience with others, so I write.
And ma'am, like the number of hats you wear, like you're a mother, a teacher, a wife, a social worker, entrepreneur in your own way. So how do you juggle so many hats? And
different stages I had different hats. All the hats I did not have at the same time. Like my children have grown up, married and settled. So even though I'm mother, I don't have to worry about whether they went to school, they have homework, how they did, nothing. So that hat is gone actually because they are independent. Now, writing is my love actually. So I enjoy writing. It's my stress buster. It's also my expression of my emotion. And I have good help also at home. There is a person, good help in the office and good help at home. I have 2 secretaries who look after we get 400 emails, 200 calls. They screen and give it to me. Similarly, domestic help also, I have domestic help. And I don't go out much, wedding and all such social events. I rather save time and I read and I write. So I manage my time fairly well, I suppose.
So your life, ma'am, yours and Ms. Murthy's life has been like the inspiration for so many families, middle class and all. We all know that everybody looks up at you. What would be your one message for everyone who aspires to live a pious and live a well-meaning life like yours?
I feel you should be happy within you. That is the first thing I want to tell you. Any amount of achievement without happiness is of no use. Any amount of money without happiness inside is of no use. You should be happy. To be happy, it's a subjective what makes you happy. What made me happy is whenever I take up a job, I do it very, very well without even expecting, any award or reward. Whatever job is given to me, I do 100%. I put my 100% in that. That gives me happiness. And second thing, I don't expect anything from anybody. That gives me happiness, because the moment you expect, your expectation is this, and they do you this much. So this is the grief in between. So my expectation is not there. So I will do what I can do, and in case they are nice to me, or they do something in return, that's a bonus. But I assume that people will not do. That's the reason my expectations are very minimum. And third thing is, helping people gives me a lot of happiness actually. So I always say I really want to thank those people who have taken help from me, because that has made me very happy. Okay. Fourth, minimalistic, you don't really require so much things in life, and it's a greed. We hold 200, 2000 saris. It's a greed that we want to this many furniture, this many things. It's a greed. And if you really want to live in a happy way, you should have minimum things. Then you don't worry about many things. So I always believe you should live in minimalistic way, and minimum things what you have. That is better. But it is my personal view.
Very, very well meaning, man. These are mantras that can help anyone and everyone. We have some queries from our team members with regard to the work that you have been doing at Infosys Foundation. As chairman of Infosys Foundation, you have led the CSR initiatives and given your call to social causes, whether it's rehabilitating flood-affected victims, saving old monuments, or ensuring education for children, building toilets, hospitals, libraries, supporting the World Wildlife Fund for sustenance of the olive ridley turtles, or supporting Chennai's premier mathematical institute. Which of these causes would you regard as the closest to your heart?
Well, we have done so many things. But, I worked with the Devdasis, who became sex workers, rehabilitating them. Actually, I've written an article on that. There is not the 3,000 stitches. How these people, Devdasis, 3,000 of them I changed in 18 years, is extremely dear to my heart. It was the toughest job. The success was in single digit. It took long 18 years. I had an excellent help by the name of Abhay Kumar, who came and worked with me and still working with me. I had to really go all weekends there, sit with them. And, pimps used to call me and said, I'll break your knee. All those threatening calls I used to get. But at the end, 3,000 of them changed. That is very dear to my heart.
That's really inspiring. In fact, we have read about the Devdasis, the way you ended up ending the slavery practice, empowering these women, uplifting them, ensuring a good future for these children. So, you think this is a work in progress, or
it's really doing very well now? Now, after 3,000, now they have become 5,000. They have their own Mahilas Vimochana Sangha. Then they are able to put their demands to the government, all those things. So I think this I started as a movement actually later.
Interesting. And today we see that, of course, when you started, it was like one-off women in engineering college. But today we see girls and young women are breaking the glass barriers, joining the armed forces. We had women leading the Republic Day parade. They are flying aircrafts. India is one of the highest number of women pilots in the world, and they're on the top of the corporate ladder. There is a overall feeling that women need to come in more and more leadership roles. So what do you think we can as a society do to promote and to help more young women and girls join more important positions?
Number one, at home the family should support. Otherwise it is not possible. Because I always say, behind every successful woman, there is an understanding family and understanding man. Because unless the family members understand her achievements, her passion, her sacrifices, a woman leader is difficult to happen. Okay, so a family should support her, and in office she should be treated equal. I don't say she should be treated special, but equal. And women themselves should have to little bit work harder than men, because it takes some time to break the ceiling. It is not immediately to break the ceiling. That's what I feel.
Very nice and very inspiring, ma'am. Even during the pandemic, ma'am, when we had the lockdown and when we had the lot of things shut down and all, and people were like generally down and there was a pile of gloom all over. Even then, the foundation was very active and was doing a lot of work in Karnataka and all over. So, how did you manage to keep up your energy and the spirit during this times also?
Because I always believe this too shall pass. It's like a World War III. When there's a war, universal war is there. You are nothing special. You are part of the war. So you have to keep fighting. You have to keep fighting. You can't surrender. Then, history has taught us. Looking at the history, the pandemics have come once in 100 years. It could have been a Spanish flu. It could have been a plague. It could have been a cholera. Many things. Every century there's one pandemic. But when pandemic came, it has never, thrown away the human race. It has affected, but it has not reduced to zero human race. So a man, as a human, we can really, oppress it, remove it, treat, throw it out, but we have to work together. So whenever there is a gloom around, I always look at that. Look at positive side. This too shall pass. This is the only time we got where we can pursue whatever we have not done before. And together we should work. Then only we can push it out. So I always like to take positive way, think positive way, and that keeps me away from gloom.
Interesting. Ma'am, during the pandemic, we also saw a lot of adoption of digital technologies and a lot of work from home happening, a lot of IT solutions being used, and a lot of technology being at the forefront of dominating our lives in every way, whether it's online learning, healthcare, and all. So, being so close to the way technology has evolved in India in the last 3 decades or so, what do you feel is the future of technology and how much technology will play a role in our lives?
Of course, technology will be inseparable. I feel that way. You may be remembering long back, about 50 years back, I think, IBM had said that world doesn't need a computer, we own more than 7 computers. But that is not true. Today, I cannot imagine how one can survive without WhatsApp. How an office can survive without an email. And right now, you are sitting in Delhi, I'm sitting in Bangalore, still we are conversing. So in coming years, I think a travel will reduce, particularly for meetings, board meetings or any meeting. It's more of a Zoom. You can reduce a lot of money by that. And work from home is not always flexible, because if both husband and wife are working from home, it's hard for a mother to take care of children. But majority of the time you can work from home as long as you are efficient and you are responsible. Not work from home is not for everyone. It is meant for those people who are responsible and who can deliver. For them only work from home. Otherwise, they have to come to office. Because the moment you don't deliver, then work from home is not useful to you. And again, the service department will not have work from home. Like driver cannot say, I will work from home. A security man cannot say, I work from home. Where you have less human interaction, probably you can do work from home. I think in future, I think that. And I always believe technology plays an important role in every field of, in our life. Like today, without technology, medical field will not be able to progress. Like CT scan, everything is nothing but technology. So technology is going to come in everybody's life, in day-to-day life, and it is going to lead us to lead a better life.
Exactly, ma'am. And what we have also found that like work from home and allowing people to work remotely has actually benefited women in a big manner, because very often women had to take leave to be able to take care of their children and family members. But when they have worked from home, they're able to manage the both in many ways. Now, you are a source of inspiration for so many people across the globe. Who would you like? Who is your role model? Like, who would you regard as your role model inspiration, which helps you in ensuring that you keep on doing so much of work even at this age?
Different time, different people. It's not only one person. When I was young, my grandfather was my hero. So he was a great Sanskrit scholar. I picked up Sanskrit from him. My dad was a doctor. Then he became my hero in my teenage. So my dad always believed patients are gods. Helping others is very important. I believed, and I really picked it up from him. Then I worked with the House of Tatas. So I looked at JRD, the way they helped society, the way they were so selfless, the way how House of Tatas gave back to the country. I really liked it. Later part of my life, right now, poor people are my inspiration. When I look at poor people, I always feel I have a duty towards them. I have a duty towards my country. I'm extremely passionate that I have a duty towards my country and my society and poor people.
It's truly inspirational, ma'am. Like having role models at all stages of your life and trying to adapt and trying to measure up to them. It's in fact something that many of our viewers, many of us can follow in our own lives. Now we're coming to the end of the ma'am this session. So, as a global icon, what will be your message to the youth of this country?
Have patience. Over a period of time, people's patience has reduced. One psychiatrist was telling me the attention span today is some 17 seconds or something. I was surprised. People get bored very fast. People don't have patience. If my way or highway, don't do that. Have patience. Work passionately. Work for passion, money follows. Don't work for money. Work for passion, money follows. Be honest. You can earn a lot more money than cheating someone. Be honest. Be passionate. Be a hard worker. There is no shortcut for success other than a hard work. And be compassionate to everybody. Because life is, every moment it changes. Life is ever changing. Be compassionate to others. Particularly when you have power in your hand. When you have a say in your hand. Be nice to others. Because when you don't have power, you will be nice to others. But when you have power in your hand, when you have an authority in your hand, when you can punish somebody, when you have money in your hand, be compassionate to others.
So that's amazing, ma'am. With this, we come to the end of it. Thank you, ma'am, very much for your time, sharing your journey with us. A journey enriched with a vast repertoire of unique and innovative humanist interest stories. Your belief and passion for making a life great gives us hope, inspiration, and courage. We look forward to interacting with you, ma'am, more in days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am. We are extremely grateful for this conversation. Ma'am, your career, your whole life continues to remind us that success will follow humility and perseverance. I'm sure your inspiring journey and encouraging words will continue to motivate generations. Thank you again for your time, ma'am. With this, we close our session for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow our social media channels for more such interesting videos. Thank you. Namaskar.